Hey, well, I'm going to revert to a previous video that I've made because I've made so many videos talking about Ogwu. I've called it an alchemical configuration with a touch of honor at the psychic potent mouth of the Dibia. So when we now talk about Ogwu, Ogwu is a controversial topic in the Igbo community, Igbo spiritual community. It is a very controversial topic in the sense that a group of us believe that Ogwu is part of our indigenous practices, especially when we now talk about Enwere Alasebo, and there are some degree or extent of Ogwu that is acceptable by nature. And there are this group that will say that Ogwu, it is not part of our indigenous practices. Whatever makes you sleep at night. But we need to understand where this thing of Ogwu is not our traditional practices, or is not part of our traditional, whatever we do in our tradition. It is not acceptable and it's not part of our customs and tradition. Where is it coming from? Where is it coming from? Now, I've talked about the various aspects of Ogwu in my other videos. I've talked about the various aspects of Ogwu. We have Ogwu. Now, Ogwu could be herbs that are targeted at protecting your life and your property. Now, these kinds of Ogwu are acceptable. Ogwu doesn't maybe now have things like where you're only trying to protect your life. So to a large extent, there is an aspect of Ogwu that is acceptable in our culture, even by nature, our natural and natural principles. It is acceptable. Now we now have another kind of Ogwu, Ajo-Ogwu, that is targeted at destabilizing the standard of life of other people. This is where we now see ndị na-akọnse, ndị na-enye mmadụ enye ure, ndị na-ekechi mmadụ, ndị ji mmadụ agwọ ọgwụ ego. This is where they come from. Ha ndị nke a na-agwa Ajo-Ogwu. We will now have ndị na-eme ọgwụ ike. Ọgwụ ike could fall under the category of ndị na-eme amansi. For instance, a na-agba afiolo when they are engaging in all these masquerade activities. If una na-efe ajụ, the psychic inflation of a dizziness, if una na-efe ajụ in that area, in that region. So what you will ask here is that in those areas. So these are, to me, these are the three major aspects. There could be other ones. But what I'm now making reference to Ajo-Ogwu, especially if the category is coming from Ogwu. If the subcategory is Ogwu, which falls under the burden of Ajo-Ogwu, it's very difficult for people to accept that it is not part of our culture. For instance, when we now talk about Ogwu, when did we even start making use of whether paper money or Igbo? The initial standard of trade for Igbo is trade by barter. The one I have, I will tell you, let me take this one and give you that one. Trade by barter. That was the standard means of trade for Igbo. Eventually, evolution. We say using ego of different kinds. Even ego with cowries. Now, we now have the existence of paper money. Now, the numerous kinds of Ogwu that they now institute, Ogweji, Achotana Bego, we will now have Okite, we will now have Ibubu, we will now have Awele, we will now have different kinds of Ogwu that even the one that they are currently, they are bringing it out because if anything that does not help in growing a people's consciousness, these are the things that people are going to channel their energy to and be bringing an updated and upgraded versions of those things. So there are so many kinds of Ogwu that they have upgraded. Now, the origin of Okite and Ibubu, we need to understand that these things were charms that a community would come together and agree to institute and use them to fight. Igbo work. Igbo work. These are things that community comes together, and once they are done using it for that specific function, they are going to destroy it. They will come together and agree and say, we are going to do this thing. They will find a way. Now, once they now do the Ogwu, once the Ogwu has done what it comes to do, they will come together and they will destroy it. Maybe they will tell in the community, no man should sleep with his wife for how many days. No woman should do this one. And everybody will come together and observe that morality and so that is accompanying that particular Ogwu as at that time and aware. Then once they've achieved what they want to achieve with it, they will discard it. Suspend to how many centuries after, young men and young women are now doing Igbo Borg and Okite and Awele. Well, I'm not in any position to tell anybody not to do. Your Oka will be fine. If your Chi and the Zume said you should do, do. But you know that if you're not a wafa, I say, hey, your Chi says you should do it. Go another place, because that Dibia might just be looking for his pockets or her pockets. Your Chi said, your Chi said, I'm not saying another thing again. But I want to talk about the major reasons why Ndi Igbo don't engage in these kinds of Ogwu. There is a reason. Now, Ogwu that you want to institute, Ogwu, when they say Ogwu, I call it an anatomical configuration because it involves the mixture and the concoctions of different kinds of items and roots and herbs, and therefore giving a command through the Dibia to perform a certain function. Now, during that concoction process, the question is, what items did the Dibia use in making such configuration, such concoction? You could not, because many of us are not even in an environment. Many of us don't even. So what we do is we pay and we go back. Some of us are even not even within the country. Some of us pay and we leave. I say Dibia, or ya so atiba. Now the Dibia, if they want to do an original Okite, whether you like it or not, if they want to do an original Okite, mind you, they will definitely use human parts. Whether the one they acquired from a mortuary, or the one they killed somebody and used that person's parts to do it. But they are going to use human parts to make an original Okite for you. And this kind of Okite, they are not coming to tell you, oh, it might work or it might not work. Oh, it is delaying. It is that one. They're not. Oh, that once they've done it, the original Okite, it must work. It's not a question of I did this and I did not work. I did that. In fact, I like because of my work, I think I've gotten people coming to me to say, oh, this Dibia did this Ogwu, that Dibia did Ogwu for me. And sometimes I tell them, you should be glad they did not work. You should be glad that it did not work. Because if they do the real thing for you, sometimes those ones that they do without human parts, well, I don't know whether it's working or is it just coincidence, but let me just assume that it's working. Because some people say, oh, this Dibia did this awele for me and it worked. I say, okay, no wahala, it worked. That Dibia did this, okay, no wahala, it worked. But if they should do an original Okite for you, there is no question of did it work or did it not work. It will work. So they would go and get these human parts and nyakageji. It will become part of the items that they are going to use to institute your beloved Okite for you. So because of the items used in preparing some of this ogwu. This is why our ancestors, in their wisdom, will tell you that Igbo ogwu abụrụ omenala Igbo. Ọ sị gị na Igbo na-achụ ego, na ndị Igbo afụka ego n'anya. This is because we know that the principle of money is you being active, you working. Ịgba mbọ ịchụta ego. Ọ bụla ịgwọ ọgwụ ịchụta ego. So this is the fundamental principle why ndị Igbo ga-asị gị ọgwụ abụrụ omenala Igbo. Sị gị jee ịgba mbọ. Asị some will tell you omeketere na chi ekwelo. Onye gwa gị chụba aja. Keep working on yourself, sacrificing, and keep improving, self-improvement. This is what the Igbo philosophy is all about. Now, currently in Facebook, I saw a dibia that was making claims. Oh, if I do this ogwu for you, I give you 4 days. 4 days. And guess what? Many of our young boys were trooping to his house, and at the end of the day, they got scammed. Because after the 4 days mark, nothing happened. And when they went back, if they play the show, it did not work. What did they do? He began to threaten them. Now, back to what I was trying to say. To make ogwu effective, the items and the materials you use in instituting it, they differ. And this is where the issue is. If they use human parts to do your ogwu for you, you are in trouble. Because what is going to happen here? Nature is going to demand a restitution. You are going to pay for it. And mind you, what ogwu does for you is that ogwu says no to the standard process and foundation that your chi and the zumezu have laid down for you. Ogwu says no because ogwu has its own consciousness. That's one thing that scares me the most about ogwu. Ogwu has a capacity to grow. It's just like AI. I think that AI. You have this AI, and after a while, it had this unconsciousness, and it started acting against the commands that was given to it. So these were the things our ancestors feared. Ogwu can grow its own consciousness, and it says no to the standard process and foundations that has been laid down by your chi and the zumezu, and drags whatever command that you have given it closer to you. For instance, if your chi has predestined that you are going to get a helper at the age of 35, and this helper would help you to gain an access to a multi-billion company, maybe if you're a trader, after you've gotten that connection, and you will work that connection to the extent that you're going to be the next Cubana because of that singular connection. But it is going to happen to you when you're at 35. Because of the lack of patience, you would run to a dibia to acquire ogwu. And what the dibia will do for you is that now, after the dibia has instituted that ogwu for you, that ogwu, maybe you're like 22, 25, that ogwu would want to project what you have or what you should get when you're at 35. It would bring it closer to you. It bypasses everything nature and your chi wants to teach you. It bypasses their foundation for you. It bypasses their laid down destination for you, and forcefully push you or set you in a trajectory that will not last for you. So yes, maybe if that contract is supposed to come to you at 35, I'm just giving an illustration. That contract that is supposed to come to you at 35, and also from there give you contact of other buyers and connect you to high-paying customers. It would give you that money. It will drag that connection to you closer. At 35, it will now bypass every other accompanying blessings or every other accompanying resolution or things or events that are supposed to push you into or set you up for life. And that project that you're getting at that 25, 22, you would not be able to fully utilize that money. Because what happens here is that the event, the discipline or the skill set to perfectly execute that job at 35, it is not something you've harnessed. It's not something that you have. You cannot. Probably that at 35, along the road, you're supposed to gain some sort of skill, some sort of a way that you do that job, that somebody else will see it, or the person to give that the connection will see it and say, oh, who did this job? But because you've not passed through that process, that event of learning that skill, you've not done it. What happens here? At 25, the investment or the work comes to you. You do the job, they pay you for the job. It's a huge sum of money. It is going to last you for a couple of days, and that's it. So you see what is happening here. Ogwu, by forces, it bypasses your foundation. It bypasses the principle, the predestined path of your chi and the ezumezu. And it pushes you into a path that would not set you up. It will just start causing you problems. Now, there are other things that they will tell you if you involve in it, depending on the items you used. That depends on how nature will try to take from you in order to restitute and maintain balance. So imagine you use a person for this Ajo-Ogwu, for this Ajo-Ogwu. What do you think nature is going to take from you in return? And most times, you might not be aware of what the Dibia did to make that impossible for you. So Ogwu has a lot of gray areas and a lot of uncertainties. This is why our traditional practices is rooted in natural principles. With this principle is focused on the Igbo concept of chi na ezumezu. And this is because they have this organic interaction between themselves. They communicate. They are fundamental to you and your identity. Every spirit is so you will be. It is connected to your root, your chi, your awu, your ndichi, your ndimiri. All these things are connected to you, to your roots. So this is why our ancestors followed the mandates of their chi na ezumezu and excluded Ogwu. Only went for Ogwu when it is communally beneficial and when nature permits it, which is targeted at the preservation of life and property. So I don't know if I'm able to give this explanation into perspective to tell you why Ogwu is not advisable for you to engage in. While Igbo adaghị agwọ ọgwụ, why ịgwọ ọgwụ esoro n'omen ọdịnala Igbo osoro. So I hope I'm able to help and I'm able to give you some sort of direction, some sort of explanation to the essence of this concept. And until next time, yeah guys, yeah. And don't forget to subscribe and ask your questions. I'm going to be listening or waiting to read your comments and your questions at the end after you're done watching this video. Yeah guys, yeah.